Hello and welcome to our Reboot review. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we're discussing the episode The Crimson Biome, which is a great name for an episode.
Yes.
This episode originally aired December 10th, 1994 in Canada and January 7th, 1995 in the US. Why? I have no idea.
Scheduling, most likely.
So let us go with the number one movie in America for its air date in Canada, so mid December.
Again, it was a while since the last time we chatted, but I believe when you mentioned it, it was the Santa Claus that was supposedly going on. I wouldn't be surprised if it was still in the first place spot. I'm not sure what exactly would have beat out.
So it actually has been beat out by a very odd choice of a film. So it's been beaten out by a little film called Disclosure, which I don't know why this film got released in December.
Yeah, that sounds a little weird. Like the name doesn't ring any sort of bells, and it's like, was it kind of just name recognition of who it was, or
I mean, it's Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, so there's some like name value in it, but it's a movie about sexual harassment. So Christmas.
well, supposedly. There might have also been the case that it was one of those particular Oscar baiting ones and or social commentary sort of films that they wanted to supposedly make.
I mean, I think the intention was for it to be like an Oscar bait, but I don't like it didn't, win any awards.
Failed.
And it only got a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes, so.
From reviewer side or from audience side?
Reviewer.
Mm,
It's apparently not very good.
yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, moving on to the number one song in America, Dave. I'm not even going to ask you because it's still on Bended Knee by Boys to Men.
Yes, with that marvelous band. You think with how often they would be around in this sort of time, it would be very much remembered, but kind of a marvelous case of it just wasn't our time, being 4 years old.
Well, I feel like they are very 1994, 95. And then kind of aren't super big after like maybe 96.
Found that magical spark of things, and you know how quick it can kind of disappear for some people.
They've released albums up to 2017.
Yeah.
I thought they were done in like 2000. I mean, good
Yeah,
on them.
it's kind of the interesting sort of case of they still kind of exist even after their fame kind of peters out.
I just figured that after like nearly 30 years they would have given up. Actually,
They
it's more than
possibly
30
just do it
years.
for the music.
I just figure after that long you can't stand being in the same band as people, but I guess in this case that's not true.
Who knows? Again, it's also kind of the case of whenever a band does kind of get mentioned, it's either they're super popular or the breakup is messy.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go to this episode of Reboot, which involved pirates. Um, this
Which,
was.
from last week's discussion, you sort of left on the hinting of, oh my gosh, you're supposedly exciting. Did it supposedly meet your expectations, or was it a little bit more, hmm?
Okay. This episode had the same problem I have with a lot of episodes, it seems. In
Yeah,
that
understandable.
there's a really good build up, and then I hate the last like 5 minutes.
Uh,
Because like there's this really cool build up where the pirates come in and they're looting and plundering and they're taking all this stuff and they kidnap Bob and oh it's really cool. How are we gonna get out of this? And then it comes down to Dot just giving them business advice and going into business with them, and that solves the problem. which I'm not a fan of that.
On the one hand, I'm not too surprised, but on the other hand, I would have thought that you might have had the uh weighing sort of thoughts of the two different sides of things. Yes, pirates plundering Yar Har Harness and whatnot, but also the other aspect that they throw onto this that makes it a little bit more interesting, at least from my viewing of it and the memories that I've had of it previously.
Okay, there are a couple of things I want to throw out because there are some great references in this episode.
Yes.
So, in the opening scene at the port, we see a parody of Punch and Judy called Punch Card and QWERTY, which
Yes.
I was quite happy with this. There's also a reference to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I'm guessing you didn't catch this because it's kind of subtle.
There's a possibility, but there was one or two things that's like, oh, there's a reference to a thing and it was awesome. But what it was referencing was kind of up in the air. Most likely, I think it was the comment that Dot made before they were chasing the pirate. I can't remember the quote exactly, but she quoted off of, I believe it was Moby Dick or one fairly famous nautical novel.
I'm talking about there's one from Star Trek II, which is I forget who says it, but they say they tasked me and I shall have them, which is a
That
reference
is
to
her quote. Okay. It is the case that I got those references confused.
okay. Oh, it might also be a reference to Moby Dick actually, but I don't know. Oh, there's also a piece of Kilroy was here graffiti, which
Yes,
was
very
funny.
much so.
Also, there's a mess. I think it's a piece of graffiti that says "I want my MTV," which I quite enjoyed that too. I was like,
Mhm,
okay, like there's some good stuff here.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, okay, sell me on the ending of this episode because apparently you liked it a lot more than I did.
Well, it's mostly a case of this particular episode has some memories to me of what it introduces, and as well as things that will supposedly happen in the future. But the things that I'll mention for right now is it gives highlight to a particular character that's going to be coming onto the cast. A character by the name of Mouse.
Okay,
And it was first shown up was Bob is in prison on the pirate ship and is trying escaping. And the jailer kind of mentions that there was only one person that ever managed to escape from them that had the insignia of a little mouse. And Bob says, "Oh, I know her." It's like, "How the heck do you know Mouse?" It's like, "Trust me, it is a long story." And it's interesting that we'll supposedly get some little bits of details on that story, but yeah, we'll save it for when it comes up.
okay. I don't remember this character at all, so that'll be interesting.
Well, it was just mentioned by word. It's no one that
No, no,
specifically
but
showed up
like,
within the episode.
but like you said that they were joining the cast. Like I have no memory of this character in future episodes.
Okay. But anywho, it's also a bit of an interesting case of taking things out of the norm for the story, having a bit more change of setting. And you'd figure that if there was a port idea within mainframe, that it would possibly be bigger. Like, seriously, out of the entire thing of mainframe, that tiny, microscopic bit of section is the port. And it's like, whether or not this is sort of the case of just either being a personal computer or other sorts of thing like that, you figured that that would look bigger. That was the first thing that I remember seeing that was like, that is so tiny.
Wait, I want to check on something here.
Well, anyways, while you check, I'll quickly comment on other particular things I enjoyed about the episode. Was just the entire pirate cast is just a marvelous bunch of characters with the Captain Crimson Biome himself, as well as most of his crew. I can't name specific members. Um, I sadly can't remember his name, but just essentially the SME of his crew that runs all the business aspects of it was mildly hilarious to come back to, and always remembered that, yes, they're pirates, but they're digital pirates, which nowadays is a heck of a lot more sense than how it was back in the day.
I was gonna make a reference to how they should have called the port USB port, but then I looked it up and USB wasn't a thing until '96. So, but I agree. I
Oh,
okay. Go
oh,
ahead.
and then of course, Princess on the pirate crew was always a nice little case of jokes, and sadly, it's a case of it's always a nice character to have on the crew, but she doesn't get expanded more so than being the brute force of the crew and a couple other little tiny bits. But nevertheless, it's nice to see the character again, and also someone that can manage to tangle with Bob.
I do love that uh, the the pirate captain is called Gavin Capacitor, which I was like, that's okay. That's a pretty good reference.
But yeah, just the fact of all the particular things they kind of reference within the episode, the change of pace, the couple different sort of styles of it. The again pirate aspect to it, but also taking it more from a business angle, sort of meshing a little bit more with the scene of Reboot and its style itself. I sort of find it fun, but also kind of a case of I could probably understand if you were expecting a little bit more of a swashbuckling, more of adventure instead of a bit more of a business venture with how it ended up. I can somewhat understand, but nevertheless, it's also fun to kind of see Dot in her element, kind of dealing with the pirates in the way that she can manage it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a completely reasonable argument. Like it does give Dot like something here. But yeah, I'm like, oh, pirates, we're gonna get a bunch of like really cool fight sequences, and you know, like somebody's gonna be forced to walk the plank, and then that kind of just doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
But I do agree that like giving Dot something like kind of like putting Dot over in this episode is probably not the worst idea.
Mhm.
So yeah, did you have anything else about this episode, Mr. Dave?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Though, I suppose the one other particular thing was just sort of the idea of the specific amount of travel that a person could supposedly take. Again, pirate ship sailing on the sea aspect within this sort of thing, in case of either having to take a portal to exit, like how much is the difference from mainframe to how far these particular sorts of things is. And they kind of play around with the idea, but they really don't really explain it too much.
No, I also I don't entirely understand how this geography works, but I'm gonna try to not like make that an issue because I just assumed
Yeah, it's
mainframe.
honestly one of the easiest things to kind of leave off to the side. There's most likely a decent enough kind of explanation to it, but going into that route would just sort of either oversimplify it or just leave you just questioning a whole lot of things that the designers of the show either left on the cutting room floor or didn't want to take too much into account.
I'm assuming they just never considered
It's
because
true.
why would they? Anyway,
Yeah.
next week we'll be discussing the episode Enzo the Smart. Oh joy, another Enzo episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Since he's one of the particular characters that you enjoy in a certain way.
So, in an attempt to make himself smarter, well, I mean, anything could do that. Enzo inadvertently turns everyone in mainframe into simple minded 8-bit dolts. Now he must turn them back to normal before their naive ways get them nullified in a track and field game. How dangerous can track and field be? My god. Alrighty,
They
well,
supposedly raise the stakes, but yeah, it's tricky.
I guess we'll find out next week. Until then, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.